Hello, this is Gordon Robertson, the president of the Christian Broadcasting Network. Years ago, decades ago, back in the early 1970s, my father made a commitment to Israel that regardless of whatever happened, CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network, would always stand with Israel. And over the past few weeks, we've seen incredible events happen there, and we want to send the message to everyone in Israel, everyone in the Christian world as well, that we continue to stand with Israel. We stood with you on the rioting on the Temple Mount, and we filed a news report showing that they had stockpiled, the Palestinians had stockpiled rocks and fireworks in that mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and we're using that religious site as a place to incite violence against Israelis. And that was the provocation that led to Israeli security forces trying to bring peace to the Temple Mount. We stood with you also at Sheikh Jarrah to show the real story behind what was happening in that neighborhood, the history that dated back to 1948, how before 1948 it was owned by Jews and not by Palestinians. And we had an interview with a Palestinian resident to show the real story of what happened.
My father took the house from the Jordanian in 1956. There is agreement between Jordanian and UNRWA. Jordanian give the land, and the UNRWA built a 28 house for 28 refugee family.
Back in the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem, we stood with you to show the world the real story of the Six-Day War, the real story of the Battle of Jerusalem told by the combatants themselves, the members of the Israeli Defense Force who went into the city and for the first time said the Temple Mount was in our hands. And in that story, we told the real story of the Jordanian occupation of Jerusalem in 1948.
In the end, 350 Jewish men were taken as prisoners of war. 68 people were killed, and 1,400 Jews were expelled from their homes. In the Jewish cemetery on the Mount of Olives, thousands of graves were destroyed. Headstones were used as building blocks for the Jordanian army barracks, and officers built latrines on top of the stones to defile them. 58 synagogues were demolished. Hundreds of Torah scrolls were burned. And for the first time in 1,300 years, Jews were denied access to their remaining holy places, including the Western Wall. After the battle, Colonel Eltel reported to his superiors that the Jews had been defeated.
Only 4 days after our entry into Jerusalem, the Jewish quarter had become their graveyard. Death and destruction reigned over it. As the dawn of Friday, May 28, 1948, was about to break, the Jewish quarter emerged convulsed in a black cloud of death and agony. For the first time in 1,000 years, not a single Jew remains in the Jewish quarter. Not a single building remains intact. This makes the Jews' return here impossible.
And we know that with God, all things are possible. And with God, Jerusalem has become the unified capital of the modern state of Israel. As rockets were falling on southern Israel, we stood with you then, and we stand with you now.
And at the end of our visit, our CBN News team experienced what it means to have a shelter nearby.
You got a live one. That's how it sounds.
And that shelter was made possible by CBN Israel. We want to provide protection and comfort for our friends in Israel. And we do this because we love Israel and because of the commitment that my father made to always stand with Israel. But we also know there's someone else standing with Israel, and he will always be there. So in the middle of your trouble, always remember Psalm 121. I will lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not allow your foot to be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. And today, remember those words. Israel is a miracle. For a nation to be born in a day in 1948, for the exiles to come home again, for the desert to bloom, for all these wonderful things that have happened, we must praise God because he has been the one to stand by Israel. He watches over his word to perform it. May God continue to bless Israel, and may we all pray for the peace of Jerusalem. God bless you.